welcome to Hidden Truths Beneath Your Child's Behavior. We are so excited to share the truth about your child's behavior tonight and steps to help your child have a better tomorrow. Now, you may be a little confused about why a chiropractor and a counselor are together on a webinar about behavior, but we are going to show you tonight some puzzle pieces and fit them together in a way that you've never put together for your child, and it's absolutely going to change how you see your child's health and their future potential. My name is Dr. Angela Dixon, and I am here with Bonnie Compton tonight. We are so excited to get started with you and show you the truth.
So who are we and why do we do what we do? Well, as Angela said, I am Bonnie Compton, child and adolescent therapist, parent coach, former nurse practitioner. But as I tell parents, I believe some of my best credentials are I'm a mom of 4 adult kids and a grandmother of 4 granddaughters. I have surrounded myself with families for over 30 years in my work. My work really is a calling. I have such passion for it. And what I love to do is help moms and dads nurture their children, help grow their little ones into young, responsible young adults. So over the many years of my work with parents and kids, here's what I've noticed. Parents often get stuck and they become overwhelmed and they struggle and they don't know what to do. So they try many different things and then they're just throwing their hands up in the air. Maybe this has happened to you. I know I had days like that. I also worked with kids for many years in my practice, my therapy practice. And what I was hearing from kids was, if I were a better kid, my mom and dad would be happy. If I could behave myself, my family would be happy. And so I decided, and I worked with parents who were wonderful parents, but I thought many of these kids didn't need to be in therapy. So I had the courage, and it took courage 2 years ago to shift the focus of my practice to parenting only. And I love helping parents become the parent they want to be and their child needs them to be, a calm and confident parent, a parent who understands their child's behavior and understands that their child is not their behavior. That's not their, true essence. A parent that can stay calm when their child cannot. That's not easy, right? And a parent who has a plan. And after this occurs, and I love watching, and it doesn't take long at all for this transformation, parents begin really loving and enjoying. They find the joy in parenthood again. So that's what I do. How about you, Angela?
So I am a pediatric and prenatal focused chiropractor. And I really got involved in working with children because I saw, like Bonnie said, a point where parents really get stuck with their kids, whether they're doing other therapies, trying to change their diet, trying to enter counseling, lots of different things for their kiddos. There is something holding them back. And when I understood how the body works and how the master controller works of the body, the nervous system, and that's what chiropractors work with, is the nervous system, I got this whole new understanding of how I can help kids and how these kids can learn to start healing themselves to have this brand new, amazing future that maybe it's hard to see for them right now. I know it's really hard to see your child's grand potential when you're just struggling to get through today. And that's what I love doing, is taking parents from the daily struggle to my child can do anything without being held back.
So tonight we're going to ask you to shift your focus, shift your lens, take this one off and put on another one. My child is not giving me a hard time. My child is having a hard time. Before we get started, I want you to just put on that lens that your child is not giving you a hard time. Your child is having a hard time. So I'm going to tell you about 2 children that I saw at work. They're not your kids, but they may remind you of your children. So Nora is a 5-year-old little girl. Her parents brought her into me with anxiety and meltdowns. Now, they didn't refer to her as having anxiety. She hadn't been diagnosed with anxiety. But what they noticed was the frequent meltdowns. Every time they told her no, she melted down. Every time they changed plans, she melted down. Every time they tried to give her the red cup and she wanted the blue cup, she melted down. Many meltdowns during the day. She had a difficult time separating from her parents. So going to school was difficult. She would cry and melt down. If the babysitter came to the house, she would cry and melt down. They also had a hard time getting her to go to bed. And many of you, I bet, have struggled with that because that's one of the things I help parents with all the time. So not only was it hard getting her ready and into bed, but they had to lay with her. They felt that was the only way to get her to go to sleep. And then if she woke up when they left the room, she'd come running after them multiple times. And if they finally got her to sleep, then in the middle of the night, all of a sudden she was climbing into bed with them. Sound familiar? Whether you have a little girl or a little boy? And then I met with Andrew, 8-year-old. His parents brought him in and he had been diagnosed with ADHD and impulsivity. And they were telling me, Andrew does not listen. We probably have to tell him 5 or 8 times just to go brush his teeth or get his shoes on. And then if he goes towards his bedroom to get his shoes on, he's easily distracted. So we wait a few minutes and we go up to his room and he's sitting there playing with Legos like we never told him to do it. He also can't sit still. So at home, he can't sit still. He's up, down during homework time and at the dinner table. And then they told me that restaurants were a nightmare for their family. They just didn't go anymore because he never sat still and he'd run around the restaurant. They also said he was very impulsive. He didn't stop and think before he did something. So even though he knew better, it was like he couldn't help himself and he would repeat the same behavioral patterns. He would frustrate easily. So he loved playing with Legos, but if he couldn't get them together just right, all of a sudden he'd yell, he'd melt down, he'd throw them across the room. He was easily overstimulated. So they would take him to a birthday party and he would ramp up and just be racing around. And then when they brought him home, he still couldn't calm down. Or at a family gathering, he was the little one that was just running almost like he was wound really tight. Transitions were difficult for him. So stopping one activity and going on to the next one. Or getting ready for bed or getting ready for school. Maybe some of these behaviors sound familiar to you too. So I began to work with the parents, but what I also did is I referred the children to Dr. Angela because I knew that she could be working with them on the inside while I was working with the parents.
Yeah, so when these kiddos came to my office from Bonnie, like she said, we're working towards the same common goals for these kiddos, but I look at it a little bit different on my side than Bonnie does with hers, which is why our care pairs so well together. And so this is a neurological scan we run in our office, and this is little Nora's scan. So what you're looking at on the left side of the black line, all of the green, yellow, red, and orange, those are all on the stress side of her nervous system. This is the sympathetic side, so fight or flight. So this is what helps us survive scary, stressful situations. On the right side of that line, you'll see the words healing and parasympathetic. This is our rest, digest, heal, grow, and thrive part of our nervous system. So you can see Nora, she is that little white box with the black rim around it on the left side. So Nora, she's stuck on the stress side of her nervous system, and she is not doing a good job healing. And the things that I look at in Nora's history to explain why she's stuck where she is in such emotional turmoil is I talked to her parents about birth. What was her birth like? Was it traumatic? Was it assisted? Was mom really stressed out and ended up with her that she was a vacuum extraction baby? And then mom also reported having a lot of stress during her pregnancy. So there was actually an accident with her house, and they had to move while she was pregnant. Insurance, lots of tough stuff happened there. And then when she did come out, she had a really hard time nursing. She was colicky, just seemed like she got sick all the time, is what her parents told me. And then when she got a little bit older, they told me she was a picky eater. She was our little one that didn't want to eat what you put in front of her. She would only eat certain foods. It was really tough. And then they started noticing speech delays. And speech delays is a really big one for my kids who get frustrated because they don't have the ability to use words to tell you why they're upset. So often they just melt down, have tantrums, scream, whatever it is for that kiddo, because they're trying to tell you I'm upset, but they don't have the ability to use their words yet. She also had texture issues. So this is a big thing I see for my kiddos, whether it's the texture of clothing, the texture of food. A big one is wet clothes. A lot of these kids, if their clothes get wet, they've got to come off. They're going to have a meltdown. She was very clumsy, and she sensory input. So this looks a little bit different. The input seeking for each kid, for her, was jumping. She would constantly jump to soothe herself and get the input that she needed into her body. So when I take that history and what's going on with her and I look at this scan, it makes a lot of sense because her body's not on the healing side, and she is trying her hardest to heal, grow, and thrive, but she's wired for stress. And so it's really hard. You can't be in growth and protection at the same time. And her body is choosing protection because it feels that it's being attacked all of the time, which is really scary for a little kid. So if we look at the next slide with Andrew's scan, I have a little bit different scan for Andrew. This one, I'm actually looking at his energy output and organization on this one. So this is called the surface electromyography. And so let me tell you a little bit about Andrew's history. So again, we saw a stressful pregnancy and an emergency C-section, so a stressful delivery with little Andrew. And then right away, difficulty sleeping. From the beginning, his parents said that trying to get him to go to bed has been really tough, hard time staying asleep. And then chronic infections and colds. They said it seemed like every time there was something going on at school, he would always bring it home with him. It's like they could never get him healthy. And poor motor control. So when I say this, it can look a little different for each kiddo. So for Andrew, it was fine motor skills. Learning things like the pincer grip to write when he was a child was really, really difficult for him. He had a really hard time putting that together, was always behind. And then he had volume control issues. So if you have a kiddo like this, you already know what I'm talking about. They talk loud, they act loud, their motions are loud, everything that they do is loud. And it's really overwhelming for these kiddos, and they have a hard time settling down, like Bonnie mentioned, a hard time focusing. But all of these things make a lot of sense when you look at Andrew's scan. So on the bottom left, I have a word volume. And volume is pointing at his total energy. So a perfect total energy score is 100. Little Andrew is at a 284. So that means he has almost 3 times the amount of signals going from his body to his brain at any given moment during the day. So imagine you're sitting there trying to do your work, and there's somebody sitting next to you yelling all day, every day. Imagine how hard it would be to work. That's what happens inside these kiddos' brains. It's so loud. And that's why they're loud, because the environment that they're living in on the inside is very, very loud. So that's the environment that they think they fit in. And so that's why they're loud. And also, if we look at on the right side, you see the word organization, and that's pointing at a pattern score. Again, patterns out of 100. Little Andrew scored a 68. So this means that the organization of signals getting from his body up to his brain is only at 68%. He's failing here. So what this tells me is that when the signals get to the brain, they're not very organized and they don't make a lot of sense. So that's why these kiddos seem to react to things that aren't really happening, because inside the brain, they really are happening, even though they may not be happening in the outside world. So we should have a communication superhighway between our brain and body so we can control everything. Well, Andrew's highways are one lane, dirt, full of potholes. So the signals, they often get lost, they get shaken up, they take a long time to get to where they're going, and a lot of times don't make sense when they get there. So it's hard for him to put things together, to learn things like fine motor skills, to be able to pay attention, because everything is really confusing for little Andrew. And so I did some really specific treatment with these kiddos, but before I did, Bonnie got a chance to get started with these kiddos. And it's so important that these kids had both of our care, because Bonnie had the opportunity to lay down the foundation with the parents and get them started on the path to healing with their kiddo before I got to work with them.
So my work with parents, and as I mentioned, I no longer see kids, but if they would benefit from seeing a counselor, I certainly refer you to one. But my work with parents begins, I meet you where you are. As I said, I want you to become the parent you want to be and your child needs you to be. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. You bring in your concerns, and whatever you want to work on with your child, the parenting skills that you're going to be learning are going to also transfer to your other children. You'll be able to apply it to all of them. And even though each child is different, I can help you kind of tweak things a bit. So it's not cookie cutter approach, but in 4 short sessions, I promise you, this is what you're going to begin to see. You'll gain a better understanding of your child and their behavior. You'll shift your lens, as I talked about, your perspective. You'll become more calm and confident in your parenting, and you'll have a plan. Because without a plan, you fall right back into default mode, into reactivity, or whatever your default mode is. You'll also develop a closer and deeper relationship and connection with your child. And research has shown that kids who feel connected, the most connected with their parents, are the most cooperative and are willing to follow your guidance. So again, you're going to see the cooperation increase with them, and you're going to discover the joy in parenting again. Now, what about your kids? When you do this work, here's what your kids will gain. They'll become calmer. They'll learn to choose appropriate behavior for themselves, which is what you want, because you're not with them all the time, right? You want them to become responsible children. They'll learn to regulate their own emotions, and they're going to learn that as they watch you regulate your own emotions, as you calm yourself down, responding rather than reacting to their behavior. I actually had a teenager say to me, Miss Bonnie, she said, when I was seeing teenagers and kids a few years ago, she goes, I don't know what you've done with my dad, but he is so much nicer than he used to be. Well, truth be told, he had been doing the parenting work, but she was beginning to choose responsible behavior for herself based on what he had learned. So, as I said, the kids will become more cooperative. They'll feel more connected to themselves and their parents and family and friends also. And they'll become more empowered and confident. And that's what you really want for your kids, right?
So just like Bonnie, we see a variety of changes in kiddos once they start care. So I put up a list here of common things that parents report to me after they've been under care for a while that changes for their kiddos. And it's going to be different for every single little one. We all have different challenges and we all have different goals. And what's so amazing is when we're able to work with these kids to help reconnect them, because so often we have disconnected kids, it's really amazing the things that change that parents don't even think of. A lot of times parents don't even think of, my kid only poops once every 3 days. I just thought that was normal. And all of a sudden they're pooping several times a day. The parents just overwhelmed. They're like, oh my goodness, this is so different. Especially when they're in diapers. It's a big change for their parents. But just overall being able to help the child get more connected, make some changes that you are expecting, but also some really great changes that you didn't know were going to come your way. And what's so important when I work with these kids is they have the innate ability to heal. So think about when you get a cut on your finger, what happens? Your body takes care of it. It brings everything it needs to that cut and it heals it after a couple of days. So when I have these kids who come in my office who are stuck with these challenges that we've been talking about all night, I really want to know, why aren't they healing? They have the potential to heal within their body, but what's in the way? What's keeping them from being able to heal from the inside? Because your child is the most intelligent healer on the planet for themselves. We got to unlock that potential and allow them to heal again. So when we do chiropractic adjustments with kids, it's safe, it's gentle, it's fun. We work with all types of different kiddos in the office, and so we have really great ways to adjust kids. That's fun. A lot of times they don't even know they're getting adjusted because, with some of these cases, it can be really tough if your child is a child who doesn't like going to the doctor, doesn't like to be touched. I know that you're probably anxious about that, but we've seen lots and lots of cases, and we're really great with being able to work with kids in our office. And changes can only happen as fast as your child's body can heal. So what we do is unlock that potential for healing, and the child does the healing on the inside. And so it takes time. If you think about, if you have a child like Nora who's 5, her ability to heal quickly is higher than Andrew at age 8. So depending on the age when we get kiddos and the severity of the case is typically how long we end up seeing them. So there's no set, it's always 2 months, or it's always 4 months, it's always 6 months with these kids. It's different with every single case based on the severity, the depth of their stress, their age. So it's really, really different, but all of our care is tailored uniquely to each child that comes into our office. And the really great thing is we like to track our progress through scans. So we like to say we don't guess, we test. So if we go to the next slide, we can see Nora's progression of scans, which is really exciting. So when we look at little Nora, the left scan is her first, the middle scan is her third, and the right scan is her 5th. So we're tracking her as she goes through her care, and we want to see what type of changes are we making inside her body, because I can be told by the parents these are the changes that are happening at home, these are the changes they're reporting at school, but I want to know objectively what's happening inside Nora's body. Are we creating lasting change for her? So the first scan you saw earlier, and we talked about how she's stuck over on that stress side, the middle scan, you can see she came a lot closer to the middle line. Now this is an exciting change when it happens in the office, because when they get closer to the middle line, now they're better balanced between the stress and the healing, and they can tap into that healing side a little bit more easily. And so the changes that I get from parents is they tell me, my child doesn't melt down as often, or when they do have a meltdown, it seems like they can recover from it easier. Or maybe bedtime, instead of taking an hour, is taking 20 minutes. The child's just getting better at being able to tap into that healing, resting side of their body. Then from the second to third scan, she jumps way up to the green box, and the green box is good. That's where we want everyone to be. And so the changes that the parents tell me when we jump up like this is they tell me, my child doesn't seem like they're as stressed trying to get through their day. So it may look like, again, less tantrums, less frequent tantrums. A lot of times it's better communication, that they're able to tell the parents why they're upset, what need they have that's not getting met, instead of just screaming about it. And so they're being more efficient at handling stress. So when they're being more efficient, they're able to grow, heal, and thrive better. So a lot of their other skills start catching up. Some of those fine motor skills, some of the verbal skills. And it makes a really big difference when they're able to tell you, this is why I'm upset. This is why I'm hurting. This is what I need from you, rather than screaming all day. Because if you have one of these kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that just scream all the time. And it's really, really challenging for the parents. If we go to the next one, we can get Andrew's progression. Now, Andrew, um, this is his first and sixth scan. So I didn't do the progression as much with him. I just did beginning and end of care. So when we look at the change on Andrew from his total energy from a 284 to a 131, that's a huge difference. So little Andrew can focus better. He can listen better. He transitions better. He's getting better reports at school because it's not as loud inside his little head. So we took that screaming person who was standing next to him all day, every day, yelling, and we moved them outside the door. We shut it and we moved them a couple feet away. So it's still a little bit loud, but they're not right here in his face all the time anymore. And this makes such a huge difference in his ability to fit in school, because he's not as loud with his actions, with his voice, with his reactions anymore, because it's not a loud environment that he's living in inside of his head. And when we look at his pattern, so again, pattern is organization, he went from a 68 to an 81. What this is going to represent is, remember I mentioned before, you have a communication superhighway between your brain and body? Well, now we laid down some pavement, we widened the roads, we add some exits, we made it a lot more efficient. So when the messages get up to his brain, they make a lot more sense to Andrew. And so it's not as scary and confusing in his world anymore. So now he's able to start putting things together, like his fine motor skills. One of the things that he was so excited about is that he could catch and throw a ball with his dad, where before he would just constantly miss the ball. His throws were all over the place. Just his motor skills being able to get better, and learning how to ride a bike was super important to him, and he could finally start doing that. So these little things that happen that make a really big difference in these kids' lives. And Andrew's parents were so happy because the reports from school went from really bad, really bad, really bad, really bad, to a little bit better and a little bit better. And finally they were getting reports from school like, Andrew is fitting in the classroom. He's not the disruptive one. I don't have to make him sit in the back because he keeps getting out of his chair all the time. He can sit anywhere in the classroom. And that made a really big difference for this family and for this child going forward. And I love both of these cases that we've presented, because Bonnie's talked about the care she did. I talked about the care I did, but what was so important in both of these cases was Bonnie and I's care together. And I love the fact that both of these parents were working with her, because there's no perfect child. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be things that happen with these kids. And when you have the skills from her to be that proactive, not reactive parent, it's so different. And care in our office, it takes some time for these kids, like I mentioned, to heal. So having those skills with Bonnie at the same time makes such a big difference in your ability to be able to handle your stress of trying to parent a difficult child, or a child who's facing some challenges, who is struggling. Because I know you see that perfect child in there, that great child who has all this potential, but waiting to get there can be really challenging. So Bonnie's ability to help the parents through this transition time is so important for these kids.
So thank you, Angela. I love working with you, and we love to collaborate. There's such synergy between our work. And we also work independent of each other. So if a parent wants to reach out to you and then decides me, or vice versa, we just are here to help. So I just want to say that parenting is not easy, right? But it doesn't have to be that hard. I believe there's a simpler way, a better way to parent. And I would love to help take you on this journey, to help you become the parent you want to be, and to find more joy in parenthood again, so that you're not simply surviving, keeping your head above water, just to finally get your kids to bed, but actually thriving and loving time together as a family. What you're doing now is actually building your relationship with your child. And if you want your kids, when they're grown adults like my kids, to want to see you, to want to reach out to you, sometimes for guidance, although they have their own lives, absolutely, it begins now. And so my website is bonniecompton.com. You can reach out to me by phone or email also. I also offer a 20-minute complimentary parent discovery call. So feel free to contact me. I would love to hear from you.
And the same as Bonnie, I love to help parents. You can see our website there, newhopesd.com. I have lots of info about chiropractic care for kids and information about the neurological scans I talked about earlier. The best thing that I can do to help figure out what care your child needs going forward is to run one of these neurological scans and see where is the stress on your child's body, what is keeping them from healing, and how do we get that out so that they can start tapping into that potential again. And you can see our phone number there. I also offer a free 15-minute or complimentary consultation. So if parents have questions they just really need answered, or they're still not quite sure if chiropractic care is for their kiddo, I love taking time and just answering those burning questions and just giving you a little insight into maybe what we can do to help your child. And the best thing we can do to help your child, both Bonnie and I, is for you to take action. So whatever it was that really connected with you on the webinar tonight, take action on that. Whether it was Bonnie's coaching tips, or it was the neurological scan with me in my office, or maybe it was both, we need you to take action, because if you don't take action today, you're going to look back a year from now and say, gosh, where could I be had I started something with my child at this webinar? I know it can be scary, and I know it can be really tough with one of these kiddos, but this is what both of us do, is we are here to help you. We want you, your family, and our community to be the best that it can be, and this is how we help change communities, because we know when you have one of these struggling children, it's not just them who struggles, it's the family that struggles. It's your relationship with your spouse that struggles. Sometimes it's your work that suffers, and everything is tied together. And so don't wait. Take action. Take a step today. Give one of us a call. Reach out and find out what can be different for your child, because I know there's a healthier, happier life waiting for your kiddo on the other side of the fear that you're facing right now.
We thank you so much for joining us. And Angela, I want to thank you for being my co-facilitator. I love working with you, and look forward to working with you again in the future.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Bonnie.